All right, seems to be a little low, so we'll get started. I'm John Scholl. I'm the team leader for the Vital Congregations Project, and working with the team as we help congregations do some planning and set goals to become more vital. As I've already introduced, Amy Valdez Barker, the project manager, is on with us. Sheila from United Methodist Communications, and then also Scott from the General Counsel on Finance and Administration. And we'll all be working with you today. Don't forget to put your phone on mute so we don't get any background noise. And down the bottom of the web page, there's a place to type in for chat. And if you have any questions, you can type that in there. And we'll be picking up those questions as we go along. And then at a particular point, we'll be inviting you to ask questions over the phone. So again, I'm John Scholl. I'm also the bishop for the Baltimore-Washington Conference, and we're glad that you're here today. Our purpose here today is to help familiarize you with the Vital Congregations website and the resources that are there and how to use those, and continue to help you think about how you can encourage congregations to set goals, and then not only set those goals, but to achieve the goals to become more vital. What you have in front of you is the homepage for the Vital Congregations Project. And right there in the middle of that homepage is a video. And at some point we encourage you, if you haven't already, to click on the video. It's an introduction piece. And we'll invite people to be a part of it. We'll invite people to be a part of the Vital Congregations Project and setting goals. Down along the bottom of that homepage is some important information. You'll see in the left-hand box what Vital Congregations are. And this looks at some of the scriptural pieces that we've identified. Then in the middle box, you see a Vital Congregation has. And these are some of the key aspects of Vital Congregations that came out of the Towers-Watson report. And if you've read that report, you know there are 16 drivers of vitality that have been identified through that study. Let me just say a word about that study. This is a very significant study. Actually, in USA Today, it was called one of the most significant studies ever done. So as I was saying, the Towers-Watson study, the Call to Action study, was reported by USA Today as one of the most significant studies ever done of a mainline denomination. What was really significant about it was it took it took data from our statistical reports and really looked at the trends in that data. And then following up on that, talked to congregations, talked to pastors and laity about some of the data. So it was a very, very extensive study. 33,000 congregations in the United States. All their statistical material was looked at. And what it found was, of those 33,000, 5,000 were highly vital. And went back and talked with those congregations and found that there were 16 drivers for their vitality. And so that's what that middle box is, and you can see where you can click on the bottom one, which is a link to those 16 drivers. And then in the right-hand box along the bottom, you see what a disciple of Jesus Christ is, and just who disciples are. And then in the upper right-hand corner is an invitation to be a part of the Vital Congregations Project. And down the bottom of that box, there's another link that's an FAQ for helping to set goals. And you'll see that this is a place where people can go and when they have questions, many of those questions are already answered in there. In fact, your questions from today, if they're not already on there, we'll be posting those as well with the responses to those questions. So Amy, let's go to the next tab and pick up the next tab.
Yes, Bishop. Our next tab is the Our Story tab. And what we thought was really important was for us as a denomination to remember our story, who we are and where we came from, and what has brought us to where we are today in the United States and across the world. You will see on this tab a very old and dated video from about 30 years ago called the Clay Ride video. And what it does is it just gives you a quick synopsis of our history in 3 minutes, or about 4 minutes or less. Though this video is old and dated, we are in the process of working with Archives and History and EcuFilm to develop a new video that does kind of share the story of the United Methodist Church and our heritage, our rich heritage in which we come from, that can be utilized in confirmation groups and new membership courses and things like that. So this was what we have available to us at this time, but we're in the process of developing something new. On this tab, you will also find more information about our story and what links us to our past and the legacy that we have as the United Methodist Church. Here you'll find a link that talks a little bit about our legacy and points you to the means of grace as a way of us to live out the legacy that we have as in making disciples for Jesus Christ and in fulfilling our mission. Also on the bottom of this tab, you will see what this movement is really about. Not only the movement from Wesley's day, but the movement into today and where we are at. Here you will find a link that talks about the small groups that fueled the movement of the United Methodist Church and the paradox that we live in today. There's a video here under Our Paradox, the Expansion and Contraction of a Vital Denomination. There this will link you to a video that walks you through our history, where we were at, and where we are at statistically today. GCFA put that together, but it's a great tool to be utilized with congregations to help the congregations and leadership know where we are currently at. Today, we do recognize that through the work of the Connectional Table and the Council of Bishops, we have been called to action. And so here you've got a little bit more information about call to action. And on the final corner, right-hand corner, you will see your congregation's story. And here is a link that will take you to a place where you can actually work with the congregation and let them know what their story is statistically. This we hope will allow you to work with the congregation as they kind of unpack their story, where they've been, help you as you help them ask questions. For example, I just pulled up Andalusia First United Methodist Church in the Bay Pines district of the Alabama West Florida Conference. And you can look at their data. We've got 4 years of data with the 2010 information coming soon. But as you look at this, you can help them ask questions like, what was it between 2006 and 2007 that happened that might help you understand why there was a dip in average worship attendance. What happened between those years where there were no professions of faith. The response could be as simple as we didn't turn in our information, or there was significantly something different, and that will help the congregation kind of unpack a little bit more story as they look forward to the future of where they need to be going to become a vital and healthy congregation. Now, stories are key to our ministry. And what we want to do is we want to give you all, as leaders of the church, ample opportunity to share the stories of success, the stories of challenges with one another, so that in your work we can continue to tell the story of the United Methodist Church throughout our denomination. So we've got a few places where you are invited to share your story. Here you will see one place where you can show videos of your stories for every church or for the churches in your conference. We really are relying upon you to populate this and help us spread the word about the good work in the church throughout the United Methodist Church. The next tab is the Call to Action tab. And this is live for a little while as we continue to help people understand where we are today and what it is that is perpetuating us forward to do this goal-setting challenge. That as we as a denomination invite every congregation to set goals based upon their history so that they can move towards health and vitality. As Bishop Scholl was sharing before, the Towers-Watson report, which was a very extensive report that unpacked what our have and showed us some of the trends, identified several key things for us to remember as a denomination. The spiritual challenges is many of the key things that we as leaders of the church need to pay attention to. Our spiritual challenges, as was identified, is that we need more turnaround leaders. We need leaders who can really help congregations move from a place of decline and unhealth to a place of health and vitality and effectiveness. So training and equipping leaders to do that is one of our spiritual challenges. Another spiritual challenge that was identified in the research was we have an adverse reaction to utilizing metrics as a means of accountability. And so as we move forward, our challenge is to embrace metrics and goals as one way of helping us move action towards health and vitality. And that is closely tied into the next spiritual challenge of trust. Across the denomination, we need to build trust from leaders in the local church, conference, to the district, and throughout. We recognize that this is a huge spiritual challenge for us. And so how do we build trust in our communities and through our congregations and throughout our system? Considering that as a spiritual challenge is important as well. And the last piece, which is the key element, I believe, is we need to better connect with our neighbors and community members who have not been invited to church and who have not ever visited a church. And here we kind of unpack what this means and who these people are. But as a denomination as a whole, we've not done a very good job of really reaching out to our neighbors and inviting them into a relationship with Jesus. So this, again, goes back to the Congregational Vitality Research, and you can find information about the call to action and a video here with the reference to the Leadership Summit, the strategies, and the 16 ministry drivers or strategies that Bishop Scholl had indicated before that was uncovered by Towers-Watson, and the methodology that was used to identify these drivers. Again, this is all here in the Call to Action tab. This is a place where it will help you be able to communicate the story of where we are at today and help contextualize where the denomination is today. Bishop?
Great. Thank you, Amy. We're going to now go to the Setting Goals tab. And as we do, one of the things that I want to just underscore what Amy said was it's the stories that are really important. And there's going to be places throughout this website where churches can go on and share a story about somebody's life who's been changed or a new ministry that's been started. And we just want to encourage you as leaders in your conferences to continue to encourage people to tell the stories. Because behind every one of these numbers is a soul, is a life, is somebody who's committed to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. And it's their stories that are really important and critical. Now, under the Setting Goals tab is where congregations will be able to find resources to help them set goals. So go down to the bottom of that page, and in the lower left-hand box, you'll see how to set your goals. And the first link there is actually a planning guide. It's a guide to help congregations set their goals. And in that guide, there will be lots of different resources. First thing we want to say is goal setting is a spiritual exercise. It's really trying to discern where is God leading us into the future. So in this guide, you'll see it talks about prayer and worship and Bible study. And there's even some resources there about scriptural passages that the planning team or the congregation can study as it prepares to set goals. And all of this really needs to be made in the process of spiritual discernment. But throughout this guide, there are resources here that help a congregation identify its strengths, what are its challenges, what's happening in its community, what's happening in the congregation, and then what are appropriate goals in the 5 areas that we're asking all churches around the world to set goals in. I want to say a word about those goals. The first is, these are discipleship goals. The first one there, disciples worship. So we want to measure worship attendance and what's happening in worship. The second one, disciples make new disciples. So we're measuring professions of faith. The third one is disciples grow in their faith. And so small groups. One of the things Towers Watson said is the more small groups a church has, the more it becomes vital. So we want to measure the number of small groups. The fourth one is disciples engage in mission. So it's not only about building up this one's spiritual self, but also moving into the world to transform the world. And then the fifth one is disciples give to mission. And here we want to have people set goals on their mission giving, because it's not just about what a congregation raises for its own ministry, but how is it sharing its resources for God's work in the world. Now those goals were set by a team. It was a team representative of people from all around the world. We looked at over 25 different goals to try and discern what were the best goals for a local church. And we narrowed it down to these 5 particular goals because we really felt that these are goals that not any one of them in and of themselves, but collectively really give you a sense of discipleship in a local church. And these goals are also the goals that will help move a congregation to becoming more vital. Those goals were actually, we did a survey, and there were over 1,200 people from around the world who participated in the survey, and 87% of the participants said these were the right 5 goals for local churches. And so this has been a process. There's been laity and clergy involved in this. We've heard from people all around the world to continue to, and that helped us to sharpen these goals. And that's how we came to those 5 particular goals. So the planning guide is there to help you. You also see in that same box some other resources that can help a congregation in thinking about its church and moving forward. The next box is again more resources for the congregation. What we really encourage you to do as a leader for the conference is just to go in and play with the web page, look at some of the different resources. We recognize that some congregations and conferences are already using very good resources to help congregations plan. We're not telling you that you should be using these resources rather than what you're already using. If a congregation already has a good resource and it's working for them, or if the conference is already using a resource that's working for the conference, we want to encourage you to continue to use those resources for planning. But we want to make sure that we're incorporating the 5 particular goals that we've talked about. And there again, you can see on the bottom right-hand corner is a place for congregations to tell us their story and what's happening in the life of their congregation as they work toward these goals. I'm going to invite Scott to talk about setting the goals and some of the technology pieces that are here to help congregations set and input their goals. Scott?
Thank you, Bishop, and good afternoon, everybody. And again, a reminder, if you do have your phone unmuted, go ahead and mute it. Congregations can access their goals by going up on that Setting Goals page and clicking on the click here to get started on setting your goals. Now, we will be making some changes on this page to help to explain how this process works for local congregations through a video and some written resources. But once the congregation, or once the leader in the congregation has gone into here, they can select their church by city and state, conference and district, or by entering a GCFA or general church number, which Amy is doing right here. the search button, and we're going to call up Cedar Grove North, which is a smaller congregation in the North District of the Arkansas Conference. And similar to the history page that Amy showed before, here you can see the data for 2006 to 2009, and we're in the process now of updating, so we have some 2010 data in here. Then gets to 2011 and moves to 2012 through 2015, which are the years that we're setting goals. And as you can see here, the pastor has gone in and has set goals for 3 of the 5 categories. And a pastor can go back in later if they need to and enter goals for the remaining categories. They can also see some projections based upon their historical data, just to see some indication of, based upon the previous performance, what could you be looking at in terms of a trend for 2012 through 2015. And below that is a link that asks, how is this calculated? That explains not only how the projections here were done, but also talks about how some of these lines were calculated and what was the data that was used to get that. It then brings up a PDF document, which you can see here, which just goes through that methodology. Going back to the entry page, and here, you'll see that below there then is a submission blank. The pastor enters in their first and last name. Let's stand up again if we can here. Okay. Pastor enters their first and last name, their email address, and then if they know their interpreter login, they can enter that as well. And that immediately validates their goals. A lot of congregations go in to update subscriptions for Interpreter Magazine, and they can use that login to do that. Below that then is a series of 5 charts that are based upon the data. And let's scroll down and we can look at that a little more closely here. The red lines you'll see there, that records what's the historical data that's already been reported. Then to the white, kind of the dotted line, are the projections based upon that previous year's data. And then above that, for 2012 through 2015, you can see where the goals have been charted here. Whenever the goals are entered in, it will chart onto this data. And that gives the congregation as well as the conference leadership a way to see if the goals make sense based upon the previous performance. Does the trend line moving forward make sense in comparison to what you see in the rest of the performance? It gives you just a quick way to look at that. As you can see in this case, they are looking at setting an ambitious goal, but not a goal that's unreasonable based upon where the congregation is at, with a steadily increasing attendance over the coming quadrennium. Again, those charts are available for all 5 categories. Because some of the data changes over time, for instance, we don't have a tremendous amount of data for small groups, but there is data for each one to begin to give the baseline. The numbers that are provided there, they're not intended to give you a means of comparing yourself with other congregations or to give you an immediate scorecard on where you are right now, but to help to kind of build some context as you're really doing the heavier lifting and the more important work of saying, where is God calling this church? What are the goals that are right for us going into the next quadrant? So that shows you in a very brief and quick way what the experience will be for the congregations. Now, if we go back to the setting goals page, we can talk about what the conference experience is on this. And on the setting Bible congregation goals, you'll see, I think yes, there's a bottom link, is cumulative data by district and conference, and a login is required for this. And that login you can get if it is by requesting it from Vital Congregation at umc.org. And I'll put that link up in the chat box here in a second. Right now we're entering the login and password for the Arkansas Conference. And that brings up the churches for that conference. You have a few options that are on this page. By the way, there's one username and password for each conference. So when you do get the login, be somewhat judicious about how you're distributing that. First, we can look though at the churches that have already submitted their data, and you can see the district, the charge, the GCFA number, the church number, who is the person who submitted it, what is their email address, what's the submitted date for those goals, has the information been validated, and has this information been approved for validation. What the validated and approved are about is we're hoping here to prevent, say, a pastor from accidentally going into another church and entering goals for their congregation. What this does is it allows you as the conference leader to go in, review the goals that have been set, and then once you think that those are right and you've had a conversation with that pastor, you can click on the approved button. What that does is it locks in the information that the church has put, so no one else can go in and then change those goals. Now there will be a process over time of as we continue on this journey of reevaluating our goals, of looking at them again, of comparing them with the data that gets reported for the coming years. But for this process and going through this year and into general conference, it allows you to lock that information. The second option under conference options then is the church is not submitted. And that helps you see, and again, you can look at this by district or by conference in total, see what are the churches that maybe need a follow-up with. Particularly as you're getting to the end of this process, it gives you a pretty good sense of who you need to follow up with. You also, on any of these options, have the ability to download it as a Microsoft Excel-friendly file. I think it's a .csv file, so that you can work with that information if it's easier for you to do it outside of an online environment. You can also then look and see what the goals look like for the total conference or the total district by going into the cumulative data option. The first one of these, the submitted only, lets you see the historical stats that are submitted by the churches that have set their goals, as well as what are then the goals that they've set. So it gives you kind of an apples-to-apples comparison. The cumulative data for all churches then gives you the total statistics for each of those prior years, and then the total amount that's been set by churches that have set their goals so far. It's a little more of an apples and oranges, but again, it gives you two different ways to view these measures. And that kind of gives you a sense of what the review process looks like. I think as someone asked, can you be sure to explain why 2011 isn't needed at this time? I wouldn't say that it isn't needed, it simply isn't available. The 2010 data is based upon the year-end December 31, 2010. That's the data that many of your churches reported into their statistics in January of this year. We still have about 11 conferences that have not submitted that data to GCFA, and we're in the process of collecting that information. But the 2011 data actually won't be reported by those churches until we get into January of 2012. And I can tell you, as someone who's worked with statistics for a while, you're never exactly sure what year you're living in, just because of the way the historical data works. Can we talk here, I think we will just for a second as well, talk briefly about the vital signs tool. And that's kind of the other piece related to this process. What you see here so far is how to set goals. What we're going to go into now is how churches can measure their progress on those goals on a week-to-week basis. Vital Signs is an email-based system that's available at no additional cost to the annual conferences that allow local churches to enter data on a weekly basis on 6 basic measures that support the goal-setting process here. Those are attendance, professions of faith, number of persons engaged in a mission, number of people participating in small groups, amount of money given to mission, as well as the total offering dollars received through pledges and undesignated offering, which is partly provided to you as a management tool. It also then gives you a way to enter an additional metric, which is a narrative. Each week, a congregation can provide a narrative account of the ministry that's occurred that week. And those so far have ranged pretty broadly from people giving comments about the system and things they might want to see improved to a major gift of in-kind donations to the Gulf Coast for persons in the church that are sick that are lifting up in prayer. And we really think that that's another way that we can really build upon the sort of storytelling capacity that already exists in our connection and allow us to match up these metrics with other information from these churches and with really the stories and the stories of life change that come behind it. What you're seeing here now is actually live data that's coming in. There are currently 4 conferences that are collecting data. They are Illinois Great Rivers, the Detroit Conference, which just started this week, and the Kansas East and West conferences. And again, if you're interested in more information on that, you can contact Amy at the address she gave, or you can also go to www.vitalcongregationsumc.org, and I'll type that up here as well so you can see it as well. And I see we've got a number of questions here. Bishop, do you want to cover those now, or do you want to wait until we get to the end of the...
Why don't you pick up the questions that you've got right here, Scott, and then we'll move on.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Do I understand that the pastor or church may enter their goals, and then the DS perhaps access or approve or modify and then approve? I think that's kind of a question about how does this process work. And I do want to stress again that what we're trying to do here is provide you with some tools. And I think you can use those tools in a number of different ways. But what's important to us is that you, as a district superintendent or as another responsible conference leader in this project, have the ability to review that information and then validate it. And if you want to follow up with your congregations, even if maybe there's a correction that you know you need to make, you do have that ability to do it in the system. And so there really isn't sort of a one-right way to do that necessarily. But it really is our hope that district superintendents or directors of connectional ministry or congregational developers really do go in and kind of look at these goals as well and work with congregations to make sure that the goals that they're setting are really attainable moving forward, that they are hopeful goals and they're ambitious goals, but at the same time they're achievable goals.
Great. Thanks, Scott. And maybe just to follow up on that, let me share with you about what happens with the goals. So once they get inputted here by congregations, superintendents, conference staff can monitor those. If they have a concern, they can get back to a congregation and say, yeah, that looks a little high, based on what's been happening in the congregation. Let's talk about that. And so at times it might be appropriate to adjust those goals. Also in the future, congregations will be able to go in and adjust their goals once they start to work on them. So after the first year, based on their experience, maybe they're doing better than they anticipated, and so they'll want to adjust their goals going out. Or maybe they've encountered something, a hurricane, tornado that's really impacted the life of their congregation, and they can go back in and adjust their goals. So there's an opportunity to adjust the goals out in the future. Once churches put their goals in, and it's our recommendation that congregations complete inputting their goals by the end of this year, certainly no later than the end of February. Districts will be able to look and see what the goals are for their district and what the totals are for their district. Then the conference will be able to look and see what the goals are and the totals for the conference. And then the conference will prepare those, and hopefully we'd like those prepared by March 15th. And then they'll be sent on, and then the bishop will also bring those goals to the general conference, where each bishop will be offering for their conference or conferences their goals, and those will be a gift to God for the work and ministry of the church in the next quadrennium. And then we'll come back in 2016 and celebrate all that God has done in and through the church as we work toward those goals. So it's important to help your congregations move toward a point in which they will input their information, do their planning, discernment, input their goals. As we recommend by the end of the year, certainly can go out to the end of February. Then conferences will bundle those goals and send them on in March 15th. There are two other tabs that we want to briefly just call to your attention, and then we'll take some questions. The next tab there is achieving your goals, and it's our commitment not just to help congregations set goals, but also to work toward achieving them. You see here, this will be coming in live November 1st, where congregations will be able to go in and begin to look at some resources, some strategies for reaching their goals. What we know is that context for ministry is often a determiner in terms of what a congregation does in ministry. So we know that one size doesn't fit all, and so you'll be able to see on this page resources for smaller congregations, medium-sized, larger congregations, urban congregations, rural congregations. But more than all else, we'll also be talking about principles, the principles in terms of working toward goals and achieving goals, and what those principles are, so that congregations can work toward that. And then the last tab is best practices. And again, you'll see that will be coming live on November 1st as well. And this is an opportunity for people to share their best practices. What's an annual conference doing to work with their congregations to implement the 16 drivers, or what's happening in a district, or potentially what's a local church doing. But this is a place for conference leaders as well as church leaders to go and see what some of the best practices are out there, and to begin to utilize those best practices as well. So again, just want to highlight, this is a web page. All resources for developing vital congregations will be posted on this website. It'll be a place that people should go to on a fairly regular basis to see what new resources are there, what stories are being shared, progress that congregations are making, and also best practices that are being utilized. We can't emphasize enough for conference leaders to be looking at some of those stories that are being told about ministries and changed lives in their own conference. We think this is a great way, when a conference leader goes to a congregation, to be able to share the story that they've already told, and just lift that up and honor the work and the ministry of the congregation. So this is a great place for superintendents and conference staff to go to this website, look at what's happening in the life of their congregations, look at some of the stories, and then when they go and visit those congregations, to honor them by sharing some of that back. So let's take a look at some of the questions that have been posted here. Others might have questions that you just want to ask over the phone, so we're open to particular questions. So I see Dan Bryant's asking, am I hearing that the goals established will most probably be relatively fixed goals for the quadrennium, though if need, they can modify them later? And that's correct. So, we want to get people started. We want them to set goals. But as I was saying, we know that things will come along, or their experience will tell them something different, and they may need to modify those goals. There's nothing more important than congregations setting stretch goals, but realistic. We don't want them overreaching, because that can be a real challenge, and also just deflate their energy toward working toward the goals. I see Marilyn's asking, so a conference needs to indicate our desire to participate for pastors, congregational leaders to enter their goals yet in 2011. What we're saying there is that we don't have the 2011 data. At one point, at one level, we don't have the 2011 data yet until the end of this year, and people input their statistical reports, and then we're almost done 2011, so it doesn't seem like reasonable to ask people to set goals just for the 2011 year. And I see that Terry's asking, if a local church sets their goals, and then for various reasons they do not meet their goals, can they readjust them? What are the reasons for readjustment? Is it just to meet a goal? That's a great question, Terry. So, as I said, there might be circumstances that happen in the life of a congregation that can really put challenge the congregation in ways. There could be natural disaster. There could be a fire in the church. There could be a significant pastoral change. There might be a significant conflictual issue within the congregation. Any of these may need the congregation to reassess what its goals are going to be going forward. And that's where a conference leader, a district superintendent can be very helpful to walk the congregation through that and support them. So it's not about setting goals that we're going to make sure we meet. We do want people to stretch, But we do also know that in the life of a congregation, particularly over a 4-year period of time, anything can happen. And so we're just recognizing that adjustments may need to be made. And then Don asks, and readjustment need not necessarily be downward. That's correct. Very good. Thanks, Don. That's absolutely right, that a congregation can be doing better, and so it can certainly adjust those upward. Any other questions? You can ask them right over the phone if you have any questions. Don't forget to unmute your button, and feel free to ask a question. All right. Well, Amy, is there anything else you want to add?
Yes, Bishop. I'd like to also invite you all to follow us via Facebook or Twitter. We are live in those two social media venues as well. We will continue to try to address questions as they arise, and so I really encourage you to, if you are into social media, to please connect via those ways, because we want the questions and the conversation to keep on going so that we can, first of all, address the questions and also encourage one another and build one another up as the body of Christ. And so please connect to us via Facebook and Twitter. There are some questions that have arisen around the theology of goal setting, and so we invite some conversations about that as well. And we'll continue to look for ways in which we can spread the word and share with one another what is working in our congregations, and celebrating the successes of our churches and our denomination. The other element is that we need your help. We are very much leaning on you to help us populate the Achieving Your Goals tab and the Best Practices tab. So in the next few weeks, some of you will be receiving emails requesting, top resources for any of these areas, like worship, small groups, building up leadership, and missions, and stewardship. If you could start thinking about your resources banks and which resources that you continually lean to or advise or give out as advice to congregations, start writing those down and sharing those with us so that others might be able to glean some fruit from that as well. So again, this is an organic website, and we believe it's going to continue to move and grow just as we as a denomination continue to move and grow. So please work with us and share your expertise.
Great. Thanks, Amy. And notice that there was some questions about whether there were 2 S's on the end of Vital Congregations, and you can see the correct email address there, vitalcongregations@umc.org, or umcom.org. So there's only 1 S. Scott, anything else you want to share?
No, Bishop, I don't think so.
Okay. And again, we're just grateful for Sheila. Sheila's been responsible for setting up this webpage and a lot of the work, and we really appreciate what UMCOM has been doing. We're grateful for the General Counsel on Finance and Administration and all the work that they've done. It's just been a great team effort. Other agencies have been working along with us, and everybody's really pulling together on this particular project. So as Amy said, this is something that we're doing together. It's really a joint ministry of the church between congregations, districts, the conference, the general church, all working together to grow Vital Congregations. Here's what we know about Vital Congregations. In highly vital congregations, there are more and more new disciples being made for Jesus Christ. There's greater mission happening in the community and around the world. We also know that there's strong giving to mission at Vital Congregations. So the reason that we want Vital Congregations in the United Methodist Church is because we want to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And we know it's our most highly vital congregations that are moving that forward in dynamic ways. We also know that vital congregations come in all sizes, all communities, all ethnic groups. And so this isn't just for large churches or medium churches or small churches, for rural or suburban or urban. It's really for all of our congregations. It's not about the size. It's not about who's there on a particular Sunday. It's about all of us working for the kingdom of God. So thank you very much for being on this call, and we want to pray for you. Is Bishop Mike Lowry still on the phone?
I am.
Oh, great. Bishop Lowry, would you close us with a prayer today?
I'd be delighted to.
Great.
Let's bow for a word of prayer, please. We are you, O Lord, and greatly to be praised. And so we come to you today, giving thanks for the opportunity we have to be a part of your ongoing work on earth as it is in heaven. Help us understand, O Lord, that the church is your body, and that as your body, it belongs first and foremost and always to you, and only secondary to us. Use us in the establishments of vital local congregations in ways that are most pleasing to you, most loving to others, and most outreaching for the kingdom of God. This we pray in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everybody, and God bless.